views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Today, a joint meeting of the Bronx Borough Board and Bronx Service Cabinet will be taking place here Thursday, July 23rd, 2020, starting virtually at 10 a.m. today. Thank you again for being here. We're going to do the roll call so that we know who's here. We're going to do that by community boards. And, please take a moment to unmute yourself. I'll give a little minute. Please, everyone, bear with us with time, but we want to make sure we get everyone in. So I will say your community board, starting with community board 1. And
here.
Okay, community board 2.
Hi, good morning. Ralph Acevedo, District Manager, Bronx 2.
Okay. Good morning. Community Board 3.
Yeah, good morning, John Dudley, District Manager, Board 3, present.
Okay. Community Board 4.
Good morning. It's Elizabeth Gonzalez Rodriguez, Community Board 4, on behalf of Paul Phillips, our District Manager.
Excellent. Thank you. Welcome. Community Board 5.
Good morning, everyone. This is Ken Brown, the District Manager. How you all doing?
Very well, Ken. How are you? Community Board 6. Okay. I didn't hear Community Board 6, but Community Board 7.
Good morning, Aisha Bravo here, District Manager, Bronx Community Board 7.
Excellent, thank you. Community Board 8.
Good morning, Laura Spalter, Chair, Community Board 8.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Community Board 9. Oh, okay. Community Board 10. Okay. I didn't hear anything from 9 and 10, right? Community Board 11.
I'm here, everyone. It's Matt Cruz from Board 10. Sorry about that. Had some audio issues.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Matt. Still looking for Community Board 11. Okay. Hearing nothing from Community Board 11, moving to Community Board 12.
Good morning, George Torres, Community Board 12.
Oh, you're George Torres today, not just George?
I slipped up. I took a shower.
Oh.
I'm a little more alert, that's why.
Okay. No comment. No comment. Okay. Okay. And representative from Councilwoman Ayala's office.
Jose Rodriguez, Chief of Staff to Councilmember Diana Ayala.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning, how are you?
Very good. This is like a reunion here.
Absolutely.
Representative from Councilmember Cohen's office. Councilmember King's office. Councilmember Jonai's office. Councilmember Cabrera. And Councilmember Torres. Councilmember Gibson.
Good morning. This is Stacy Strong with the Office of Councilmember Gibson.
Thank you, Stacy. Councilmember Salamanca. And Councilmember Diaz Sr. Okay, everybody's here. So we're gonna get started. We have what could be considered a short agenda today, but I suspect that there are a lot of questions that will be asked. So feel free to do so. We have a presentation on the economic impact and the stimulus package, and we're going to hear today from Brenda Stewart Luke, and she's a tax specialist and liaison with the IRS. Nobody leave. We're past the IRS date. They're not checking for you. They're bringing us information today, so we're happy to have them. And Robin Urick.
Eichen. It's Eichen.
Eichen. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm bad with names.
No worries. No worries.
I knew there was something going on with the CH. I didn't know. And you're with the Federal Trade Commission. So I will leave you guys to start with your presentation.
All right, and real quick, I have the PowerPoint, so if you want to share them from your own computer and run them from there, you can share the screen. If you would like me to do it, I'm happy to do it. So whatever you prefer.
I'd like you to do it. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yep.
Yes,
well,
I would like you to do it.
Chris, Robin, I'll try to share mine, but if not, you can do it. Thanks.
Okay, sure. 1 second. I'll just pull up the first one here.
Okay. Well, I'll get started. My name is Brenda Luke. I'm a senior stakeholder liaison out of 290 Broadway, and I thank you so much for the opportunity to speak. And today we're going to discuss the economic impact payment, which a lot of people have known it as the stimulus payment. But as he loads the information in, I just want to say that I know a lot of people had a lot of questions in reference to the economic impact payment, and they have said that they have not received it. But I want to give a little background information on it. So this came out as a part of the CARES Act, this economic impact payment. Next slide. Okay, and as we know that this was the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, which we shorten it by calling it the CARES Act, which was signed by the president March 27, 2020. Continue. Now, could change the slide. Okay, so with this here, as we said, a lot of people have known this as the stimulus payment, and really what it is an advance refund on recovery rebates that was provided into legislation. And this was just part of it because there were other tax relief acts that was going on at the same time. And also I wanted to let you know there was mission critical things that happened as well. I mean, the IRS offices was primarily closed during a certain period of time. During this time period, just as a little history, individuals that would have opened, let's say if you sent in your tax return by mail or any mail correspondence, those offices were closed. The telephone lines was down because those individuals typically would not work from home. I myself, working in communication, I am a teleworker, so we, in turn, we were helping out answering questions in reference to the economic impact payment. And We know that a lot of people have been looking for their economic impact payment, or they have sent correspondence into the IRS and they're still waiting. We say to you, please be patient with us. The employees are going back to work now, and it's going to take a little time to catch up, but no one is forgotten about. So next slide, please. A little detail about this economic impact payment. Now, if an individual were married and they had a valid Social Security number, and they were entitled to $2,400 if they filed a joint tax return. An individual that was single and they made less than $75,000, then that individual, again, having a valid social, will be entitled to the $1,200. And each child, let's say the married individual had, because their income could not be over $150,000. So if they had a child also that was under the age of 16, they also was entitled to claim their child, and they would receive an additional $500 for a child that was under the age of 16. Next slide. Again, this would be the payment of $500. Now, one of the things that a lot of people were asking, well, I have children over the age of 16, or, you know, I've claimed my child that's under the age of 18. Can they actually get an economic impact payment? No, if that individual could be claimed by somebody else and you claim that child on your tax return, that child in turn could not go ahead and claim themselves because you claimed them on their tax return. And at the time when the economic impact payment came out, you did not have to, your 2019 tax return was not required to be filed. So this could be based on the 2018 tax return as well. Next slide. Again, this was the amount of money we discussed. If you were married filing joint, it would be $150,000, and head of household would be up to $112,000, and all others would be $75,000. Again, this would be with a valid Social Security number. So as of now, with this, individuals that had individual taxpayer identification number, better known as the ITIN, they were not eligible. The only exception for this would be if an individual married someone that was in the active military service. Then if they married someone with an ITIN, then they in turn could file married filing joint. Next slide. Okay, again, this is the breakdown with the amount of monies. We'll go to the next slide. Again, there were other details if you made over the amount of the $150,000, how they wrapped that down. So this was, again, a limitation on the AGI, because this was supposed to be a tax relief for individuals that were eligible to receive these monies. Let's go to the next slide, please. Not eligible. As we discussed, this would be dependents who could be claimed on someone else's tax return. And we discussed non-resident aliens. Again, these would be individuals that had ITINs. However, as we're going to see in the slide, we can continue to go through the slide. Next one, please. And we discussed having a valid social. So a valid taxpayer identification number must be shown for individuals that had a valid social. However, this would be also, as we're going to follow, let's see what the next slide is showing, because it's going to be showing also the fact that these individuals, as we're going to discuss, it could be a resident alien as well. Again, as we discussed, they did not payment delivery for taxpayers who file a tax return for 2018 as well as 2019. But however, it was not based on the fact that if you had not filed that tax return. So if you filed a 2018 tax return, we would use that, because as we saw as a part of the Tax Relief Act, the tax filing season was postponed until July 15th as of last week. So the 2019 tax return was not required to be filed. Again, with this, we would have sent direct deposit. Now, IRS went ahead and made an arrangement with Social Security and the Veteran Administration. So individuals that typically would have received a check from Social Security Department or the Veterans Administration, since we collaborated and partnered with them, we would use that method of delivery. We would use, if they were getting a direct debit, we would use that information. If they was receiving a check, we would get that information as well. However, as we're going to see through the slide, this CARES Act also included individuals that typically would not actually file a tax return. We can go now, individuals with, because of the security and because, as we're going to talk about some of the scams, individuals would receive a letter 15 days after the payment is received. Now, back in the beginning, a person would receive the payment via either direct debit or they would actually get a check. And as terms and times change, individuals were getting a debit card from the IRS. And however, to show that it was legitimate, 15 days after that payment was made, they would get a letter from the Department of the Treasury. Next slide. Again, in order to update the information, IRS set up two portals. One was to get payment. The other one was for non-filers. The get payment portal allows an individuals to go in and update their bank information, because your bank information could have changed from the time that you filed a tax return. We would know that. You needed to update your address. We would know that. We would go by the last address that you had on file based on the return that you filed. Also, if you would notice on the right side, it says a non-filer portal. This would be for individuals who typically would not have filed a tax return. You might say, well, who is that? Who would that be? Basically, it could be individuals that would be on Social Security disability. It could be individuals whose income was $12,000 or less are not working. This could be individuals, perhaps, again, that may be in a nursing home. These would be individuals that typically would not file a tax return. They would use that non-filer portal to enter their information. They would enter their name, their address, and if they wanted direct debit or they wanted to deposit it into their account, they would then enter that information in the non-filer tool. Next slide. Again, this is more information. And what I would like to encourage you, this information that I'm showing you is on our website and irs.gov. I mean, as advocates for the community, please familiarize yourself, because you can help the individuals, because the IRS commissioner is really interested in helping the homeless, the low to moderate income, as well as individuals who typically would not file a tax return. And it's really been all hands on deck. So as a representative, I do represent you in the Bronx, and I've done several outreach. I'm asking for your help to help get this information out to the community, because a lot of times we do not know the neighborhoods. We don't know how to get to the community. And a lot of times when people hear they're coming from the IRS, they get scared. But we need to let them know that this money is theirs, and we want to get this information out to the community. So if you could help me to help the people that you serve, I would appreciate. And all this information is on our website about the Get to Payment. Let's turn to the next slide. Again, we talked about that Get My Payment tool. Continue. Really, this is just a briefing that goes over the non-filer. We talked about that. And what I wanted to talk about, again, we can keep going through the slides because basically I kind of addressed some of them, is we have questions about individuals that may be in a nursing home. The question came up, is the nursing home responsible? Should the nursing home receive the payment, or does it belong to the individual? the money, because it was a tax relief for the individual, it belongs to the taxpayer. It does not belong to the nursing home. So these are some of the questions that have come up, the frequently asked questions. So we have a frequently asked questions on our website where every day is updated. So if you've sent out questions, because some of you, from various council members' office has sent me questions to answer, and in lieu of these offices being closed, I try very much to provide that type of service. Next question, next slide. This is talking about the process. So we can go through this very quickly and keep going. Basically, what it's showing is how to fill this out. So we can go to the end of this slide. So what we're trying to do now also today is to make you aware as we're sharing this information on how to go through the process of getting this out or filling out the non-filer tool or the get payment tool. There's individuals also that are scamming people. And my colleague will go more into that as she discussed some of the scams, but there is a lot of IRS scams that's actually there where people will say, I will help you get your refund or this impact payment quicker. So a lot of individuals, particularly seniors, have been a victim of being scammed. Also, tax preparers there have been instances where individuals go to a tax preparer and the tax preparer will actually put their information in, as we discuss about the bank information, putting it down, the method in which you can actually get it. They've used it. So there's various scams that are going on. And what we want to do is to help you be aware of some of these scams and how you can help individuals, because once that money is gone, this is a different subject, you know, and that individuals become a victim. And what we're also encouraging people, what we've seen is individuals may not be aware that the check or the monies that they're going to receive is through a direct debit card. So we've had many instances where people have actually cut up the card and then they realize that it was a card, that's where their economic impact payment was. And we're saying, please realize you're going to get it in a plain envelope. Do not cut up the card. They thought it was just a card asking, or advertisement asking them, do they need another credit card? So these are some of the scenarios and situations that have arisen during this economic impact payment time period. And realize also, I just wanted to say that this payment or these economic impact payments, this is free money. This is something that you do not have to repay back to the IRS. So we're looking again to see how many or how we can get out to these various communities. And I would really appreciate, you can invite me to any of your meetings, or we would say, even if you know have homeless shelters in which you're giving out food, maybe you can include this information and make the individual aware that they may be entitled to this monies, because there's still a lot of funding and there's still a lot of payments that need to go out to these various communities. But at this point, to go over more of the scams that are going on, I'd like to turn it over to my colleague from the Federal Trade Commission. Robin will go more into that. Thank you so much for inviting me, and please invite me again to some of your meetings. I would appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Robin Eichen from the Federal Trade Commission. I want to thank the Bronx Borough President's Office and also Brenda for asking me to speak to you folks today and for hosting this program. I need to say that my remarks today are my own and not those of the Federal Trade Commission or any commissioner. So I'm now going to try to share my slides. Okay, yeah, here it is. See if, okay. Okay, can everyone see my slides?
Yep, we can see them.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, so this is me. I wanted to tell you how we protect consumers and small businesses. We sue companies and individuals that defraud small businesses and consumers, and we do it in three main ways. One, we bring cases in court. We bring lawsuits against the companies and the individuals that defraud consumers. And why do we do this? We do this because at the end of cases, after we've asked the court to freeze the assets of all of the defendants, we can return money very often to victims. 2, we provide lots of information to small businesses and to consumers about how to avoid becoming victims of fraud and identity theft, like I'm doing today. And 3, we take complaints or what we also call them reports of different frauds or identity theft on our Consumer Sentinel database. And why do we do that? 1, we use that information to bring new cases in court. We use that information to develop new materials. And 3, we also use that material to share those reports to share with other law enforcement agencies so they can bring lawsuits and hopefully recover money to victims. So here's a slide showing our Consumer Sentinel Network data book for 2019. Now, we put out one of these data books and it has information for each state. We put them out every year. This data shows that the FTC received nearly 1.7 million fraud reports in 2019, and the FTC returned more than $232 million to consumers in 2019. Now, for those of you that are working with older adults, you may be interested in this additional analysis. Last year, younger people in the 20 to 29 age bracket reported losing money to fraud more frequently than older people. However, when people age 70 and up had a loss, their median loss was much larger. So here's our slide from the data book last year on New York complaints. It shows that the top complaint category in New York State was identity theft, and the second most reports to Consumer Sentinel were about imposter scams. Also, the most frequent identity theft complaint was about credit card fraud. Also, the total number of New York reports last year was 128,208 reports, and the median fraud loss was $300. I want to talk later about how important it is to share data with the FTC on frauds and scams that you're seeing in the community. So this is our webpage this year on COVID-19 and stimulus reports. And it has all the data for the whole country, but you can get reports from New York State or other states. It's all searchable. It shows, as of June of this year, 87,373 reports of fraud and losses of 56 million. The median fraud loss at that point was $301. So this is important. We want you to help consumers who've been scammed try to get their money back. This is advice right up front that you can give people. Consumers need to talk to the payment provider and ask for their money to be returned. For example, if someone paid by credit card, they can call their credit card company and ask to reverse the charges, because there are legal protections against unauthorized charges on credit cards, debit cards, and bank accounts. But people need to quickly act and contest the charges. Now, if people wired money through Western Union or MoneyGram, and the FTC had brought lawsuits against both and returned money to people. So if that's where the scammer got money, people need to contact Western Union or MoneyGram. Now, if people put money on a prepaid or gift card like iTunes, Google, Amazon, or Green Dot, they need to get in touch with the gift card company right away. Now, there's no guarantee that anyone will get their money back, but they should try by contacting the payment system as soon as they know they're scammed. Then report the scam to law enforcement. And this slide shows how to report the scam to the FTC in English and in Spanish. So what are we seeing lately? We know that scammers follow the headlines, and therefore we've seen a lot of scams about coronavirus vaccines, test kit offers, etc. A lot of miracle cures and home test kits that they offer to Medicare recipients. The takeaway tip: ignore online and telephone offers for vaccines, test kits, miracle cures, etc. There's only one FDA-approved test kit right now, and that requires a doctor's order. So any ads you see for these things are not likely to be legitimate. So if you see ads for prevention, treatment, or cure claims for the coronavirus, stop. Right now, scammers are hawking these products to prevent, treat, or cure the coronavirus. But if there's a medical breakthrough, you're not going to first see it on an ad or hear about it from a sales pitch. Especially if you're on Medicare, you may get calls, emails, or see ads that claim to give you special access to testing or treatments. But that's not how Medicare works. They never call you to offer you special access or put you in line for a test or treatment. And anyone who does is a scammer. And as Brenda just said, there are lots of scams about the CARES Act. So we've also heard that scammers are stealing people's unemployment insurance benefits. How do they do that? They file claims in someone else's name, someone who never filed for unemployment. So if you find out that that's happened to you, if possible, report the fraud online because it's easier and will save you time and easier for the agency to process. Keep any confirmation number you get, and keep a record of who you spoke to. Now, the FTC's dedicated identity theft site, which is identitytheft.gov, will help you get an extended fraud alert or credit freeze to your credit report. Excuse me. These may make it more difficult for an identity thief to open new accounts in your name. Also, review your credit reports often. The free site for credit reports is annualcreditreport.com. And now during this pandemic, for the next year, people can get a free credit report from each of the 3 credit reporting agencies every week. Every week, this is brand new. And this can help you spot a new fraud very quickly. Also, although most of these unemployment scam payments are deposited in accounts of the scammers, they might possibly be deposited in the victim's account. If so, the victim should notify the state unemployment insurance agency and ask for instructions. People should never respond to emails, text messages, or calls telling them to wire money, send cash, or put money on gift cards. State unemployment insurance agencies will never ask anyone to pay that way. So the FTC's work in law enforcement and targeting companies that make claims without any proof of scientific, any scientific proof is an important part of what the FTC does. The first case that the FTC filed regarding the pandemic was against a company called the SBA Loan Program. Here, the company had no affiliation with the SBA at all, but they still solicited loan applications from consumers. Unfortunately, this scam caused businesses to lose their opportunity to apply for loans through the real program. We also brought a case against Whole Leaf, a company claiming to treat both the COVID-19 and cancer without any proof that it did either. Your reports on scams matter. If you spot or one of your constituents spot what looks like a suspicious claim about a so-called coronavirus treatment or prevention, please tell the FTC at ftc.gov/complaint. So here's our infographic of 5 things to do to avoid becoming a victim of coronavirus scams. And you'll be seeing, ignore vaccination or home kit test kit offers, hang up on robocalls, watch out for phishing, that's phishing, emails and text messages, research any possible donation. We've seen scam donations that go right into the hands of the scammers and not the so-called charity, and stay in the know. And I'll be sharing some sites that provide legitimate information on coronavirus issues. We've seen a lot of scams involving government imposters, all kinds of imposters, even the FTC. If you get a message from someone claiming to be from a government agency through social media, it's always a scam. Report it to the FTC at ftc.gov/complaint. We've seen Social Security imposters saying that people's Social Security number was suspended because of suspicious activity or it was involved in a crime. That's not true. It's always a scam. Instead, visit government websites directly for trustworthy information. Don't click on links or attachments or any links in either email or text messages, because scammers often send links to websites that look like they're from the government. So instead of clicking on links in any kind of message, open up a new window and search for the name of the government agency. And visit coronavirus.gov for the most up-to-date information on the pandemic. For the most information on coronavirus scams, go to ftc.gov/coronavirus/scams. The bottom line is requests to wire money or send prepaid or gift cards are always scams. Scammers love being paid this way because these kind of payments are like cash, and they're really hard for the FTC or other law enforcement agency to recover. Once the money's claimed, the money's gone and almost impossible to trace. Since, as usual, scammers are sending emails and texts that are trying to get personal information and money, and also to put malware on people's computers. If you visit one of these sites, they'll put malware on your device. This picture is an example of such a malware site. So here's the tip. Don't click on links from sources you don't know, because it could download malware on your computer or device. We're also seeing some blackmail scams where someone says they have access to your personal pictures or other compromising information. They want a ransom, particularly on Bitcoin or other cryptocurrency. And they promise they won't expose the truth, but that's also not true. Don't pay them. Notify the FBI because this is criminal extortion. Okay. This is a slide about a tech support scam. We've seen those scams that particularly victimize seniors. It's one of the top 10 scams that victimize seniors. Here, scammers claim to be affiliated with tech support companies like Microsoft, but it's not true. It starts with a pop-up, and they want to fix your computer, fix something that probably was never broken, or to get access to your computer remotely. Don't ever do it. This is our infographic about gift cards. Gift cards should be just for gifts and not for payments. If anyone wants you to pay for anything via a gift card, it's absolutely a scam. And if you've paid by gift card, let the gift card company know right away. Your funds may be gone, but at least the companies need to know that their gift cards or debit cards have been involved in a scam. We're all seeing lots more robocalls during this pandemic because people are at home, and these are some of the things that that the robocallers are offering. They're tailoring their regular robocall scams as well, like their regular robocalls about the Social Security scam. So what do? Hang up illegal robocallers. Any robocalls that try to sell you something are illegal. Block the number and notify the FTC at ftc.gov/complaint. I'm turning now to identity theft. The FTC these are some of the ways that identity theft can happen. And people should beware because identity theft can lead to very serious legal issues, stress, and the time and money it takes to recover. We have a dedicated website, identitytheft.gov. Here it is. By using this site, you can get an identity theft report usually without even having to file a police report, and it gives you the steps that you can take to recover from identity theft. It's also available in Spanish. Here's how you report fraud to the FTC. It's really important that people report scams whenever you see them. Scams can be reported by an agency on behalf of a consumer. You don't even have to give name or contact information. Report in English or in Spanish, and you can also report anonymously. Here's how you keep up with the latest scams and share with your community. We have all these social media sites, and if you can, and they all have a Spanish page as well. Here's how you can stay informed with what the FTC offers. You can subscribe to consumer alerts, and we hope you can share them in your community. These are the top sites for the latest on the coronavirus, the health information, COVID-19 scams, and for the federal government's response to these scams. You can order FTC written resources on our bulk order site. These are two of the most popular materials. Everything is available for free. Shipping is free. Printing is free. It takes about 3 to 4 weeks to get them. Thank you so much for your time today. I'm happy to take any questions, and I'd love to hear about any scams that you've been seeing in your communities. Thanks again.
Okay, Thank you so much, ladies, for your presentation. I'm going to ask that everyone who has a question take a moment and raise your hand electronically, as we discussed earlier. And just directed in terms of while we wait for that to happen, I'm curious as to if there are any delays with the IRS in tax returns. I know that uh, processing the returns. Are there any delays to discuss? The date was pushed back to the 15th. I understand that, but because there aren't folks in the local offices, does that represent any delays that you can speak of, Ms. Luke?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, there may be delays because of the fact that the individuals are going currently back to the office. There may be delays in terms of your refund. Also, it may be delays in terms of correspondence. I mean, there have been a lot of mail, like a lot of people actually sent in their tax returns by mail. I mean, and so that meant if they sent it by mail, if there was nobody there to get it, it's just being picked up. So we apologize, and we, hope you're patient with us, because I know a lot of people sent in written correspondence. That's why we would say for people to be, especially advocates, familiar with our website, because electronically you still have that process. And we were encouraging people, like there was a slide about Free File, that individuals could have prepared their returns using Free File to do their return. But any correspondence that came in, it will be processed late. Or you might get correspondence where the date was expired. You will get a subsequent letter. And we're saying to individuals, please reach out also to the IRS and be patient, because during this time period, we tried to be, I guess, we were patient and we were thoughtful. Like, let's say, for example, you talked about maybe letters of response. Individuals that might have been on installment agreements with the IRS, they might have thought that they were not going to get that payment. They were not going to get the economic payment. However, they would. However, if they are still going through changes now because of this here pandemic that we're in, if they're assigned to a revenue officer, or if they have an installment agreement and they can't keep up with this payment, I would suggest for them to call. Please try to keep, in touch with us by telephones. The telephone services are picking up, and we will what I will do is send the phone numbers for the economic impact payment to Marisol so that she can share it. That way, if people have individual questions, and also, again, we encourage people to go to our website. And with Mission Critical, it talks about some of the services that was previously closed and the service centers that are opening up now. But it will cause a delay, but you will get it soon. We appreciate the patience.
Thank you. And I just have one other, you spoke about non-filers being able to enter their information. If you believe that you should have gotten an economic stimulus, but you didn't, is there a way that you can apply for that stimulus? Because I also feel like that might be something that scammers take advantage of, where people will say, well, I think I should have gotten a stimulus, and there's that opportunity. Does the IRS take into account people who think they should, but for some reason have not received it? And how would someone go about that process?
Well, with the non-filer too, they would update it with their current address and their information. Because these typically non-filers, we would not have their information, because typically they would not file a tax return. Also, with that telephone number that I will share, it will also have the number that they can actually call and speak to someone to see perhaps if they sent it out. Because it's good to find out, was it sent out? And a lot of individuals have moved from where they were, or again, if they're non-filer, we would have nothing on them. So it is important for individuals to actually reach out, and particularly also people that are in nursing homes. I've gotten several questions because people at one point thought that the nursing homes were entitled to the monies, but this is a tax relief for the individual taxpayer, not the nursing home. So, but through calling IRS and being patient, because a lot of people now are calling. We've gotten a lot of calls and a lot of emails from different political offices and advocates in the community. We will get back to you. It may take a little while, but I mean, I would say communication liaison, along with alleged affairs, has been the main means of contact as these individuals have been coming back to work. And we're trying very hard to get out to the community. And your office has my contact information. If there's anything specifically you need, being your relationship manager for the Bronx, you can reach out to me.
Okay, excellent. Chris, so do you have any hands raised?
Just one so far. George Torres. So George, I'm going to unmute your line. You can go ahead.
Hey, good morning, and thank you for this. I actually had a question about the stimulus check because, like you stated, I have an 18-year-old. He's an 18-year-old who just turned 18 this year. And as you also stated, we used the 2018 tax form in order to file to get the stimulus check. He wasn't 18 when in 2018. So I'm just curious as to why that's the case. And secondly, I do think it's unfortunate because it's sort of a double standard. We are claiming our son because he's going into college now, and we'll probably be claiming him for quite some time as a result of that. But he's not allowed to claim the $1,200 because we're claiming him, yet you're not giving us any relief from him or for him. So I just find it very odd. The other thing I'll say, but I understand that this is a national thing and it's twofolded. What do you think, they're discussing the stimulus going forward. I understand Congress is in the process of negotiating it right now. Is it going to be similar, or is it going to be, because my second point on this is you claim that there were a lot of other relief efforts, but really there weren't for workers, like for people like myself who are working. There was relief for people who are unemployed, and there were relief for businesses who received PPP loans that said that they were supposed to keep employees, and now we see that they're starting to lay off and furlough employees. So that whole all the money that you wasted on PPP could have gone to, American citizens instead of the businesses. Because if you give us the money, we're going to spend it. So, that's my point on this. I know that, it really doesn't amount to much of a complaint, but if you can explain, the disparity in the fact that, back in 2018, my son wasn't 18, he was a 16-year-old, and we still didn't get any relief for him. Even though that was the metric that you used to grant the stimulus check for this year.
Okay, so, I mean, I would think probably I would need to talk to you offline about it as well, but as being the person not making the law with the individuals that were, we said, or the law said, or the CARES Act said, as long as the individual was under 16 years old, the fact was that they could not be 16. If they were under 16, then the parent was able to claim him on their tax or claim him for the economic impact payment. That was the process. And some of these other issues that you might want to say, we are interested because of the fact, especially me being your relationship manager for the Bronx, and I'm the lead for New York for especially also the limited English proficient community where English is a second language, and IRS is also interested, just like what you discussed, let's say low to moderate income individuals, like suggestions, and also suggestion on how to get to the community or even how to make it better. That's what our job is. And we like to have listening sessions, just like what you're giving. I really appreciate it. And because we take those suggestions and roll it up. And now is the greatest time to actually do it. So, I would suggest, I would love, to have your contact information, and perhaps we can talk offline, and maybe some of these suggestions I can roll it up to people that have a higher pay grade than me that actually can make a difference. So I really appreciate it.
I'm putting my information in the chat so you can email me directly. My final piece on this, and I'm sorry, Madam Deputy. We happen to live in a very high expensive region, New York City. The cutoff is $75,000. Again, you know, for somebody that 75 doesn't go very far in New York City. So especially if you have children, especially if you're paying for school, which many, you know, middle income people do because they don't trust the public school system. Again, not to be providing relief to parents. You know, this is where, you know, I see a lot of people shaking their heads, but this is where the middle class always feels like they get squeezed. You know, we make too much to get any sort of benefit, but, you know, we don't make enough where it actually impacts us. And I think that this is where you lose a lot of people, especially when they start talking about government and the cynicism that it brings.
Okay.
Can I just jump in? I just want to be clear that I was not shaking my head. I put my head down because, as usual, George, you are saying something that shouldn't be said. But certainly you are entitled to that opportunity to say that. So I put my head down because we are now in George mode. You've obviously had your cup of coffee this morning.
I see his contact information, and I will get in contact with him. And as I said, we would like to invite you as to any of you. We can have a listening session where we can talk about some of the issues, and we can find a way how to go about making things better. In terms of the tax relief, some of the tax relief that we went forward with processing was, as we said, let's say individuals that might have had an installment agreement with the IRS. We postponed that. If they were able to call, especially if they had a direct debit, we were able to actually postpone that. So certain things happen, and we're willing to work with you. It's just a matter of the communications. And if you feel that the IRS isn't being fair, we also have a taxpayer advocate, which we can also include as a part of our presentation. So I look forward to maybe in the future that you would invite me back to one of your meetings, and we can discuss other tax relief efforts that we have in addition to what SBA was offering, also like now's a lot of time periods, a lot of individuals that might have been laid off, they're establishing their own business right now. And we can talk about that. So I would love to come back at another time, and maybe that's some things that we can explore.
Miss Brenda, be careful what you wish for. You have put yourself squarely in our crosshairs. We love to hear from the IRS because there's a lot of information there. I just want to touch base with Chris again. Do we have any more hands?
Yeah, just one other. Cedric Lofton, unmuting your line. Cedric, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Good morning. Related to the stimulus payments that have been awarded to individuals, going forward in the 2020 tax year, is there going to be a taxation on that benefit applied to one standard tax for the tax year?
No.
Second question.
You say, is there going to, I'm sorry, you say, is there going to be a tax benefit, or is there going to?
No, is there going to be a tax on the benefit that the individual received? Okay.
No, this was free money that the IRS gave to help during this tax relief. This is just part of that CARES Act in order to give a relief. So this was free money. That's why we even want to reach out to people that typically would not file. So that's why we need your help. So there's individuals that may be in the community that might be in a shelter. We're looking at homeless shelters. We're looking at battered women. We're looking at seniors that typically would not actually get this money. So I really need you to help me to get this payment out to the community. So any opportunity that I get a chance to speak, I really thank Marisol and Lasinia for inviting me to come to speak to you. I really need your help because you know where the people are, and maybe you can help to make the people aware that this is free money and we're not going to ask for it back.
A second question, if there is a person in a nursing home and they have a representative payee that handles their finances, I would assume that payment would go directly to that representative payee that IRS has on file or whatever entity of the federal government has on file as them being the payee.
Unless the person changes it. I mean, sometimes the payee is the nursing home. Whereas if the payment was meant for that taxpayer, it wasn't meant for the nursing home. So it was for the upkeep of that taxpayer. So that means the taxpayer may have to put in another address for the money to go. Other than that, it's a check, it's a debit card that was meant for the upkeep of the person. Wouldn't say a personal upkeep, not the business upkeep of the nursing home.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chris, any other hands raised?
Nope, just giving it one last look, but that appears to be all the questions we have for now.
I just have one question for the FTC. I know there's a lot of scams. Basically, we understand, and as soon as you find out one, they move to the next one. They're faster than us. But are there anything that you can share? Any one or two particular things that you're looking at that you're thinking we should be very aware right now? They're asking for X or they're asking for Y. Is there anything like that that you can share today?
Absolutely. Well, one thing I said already is that if somebody calls and says they're from the government and they want your personal information or your money, it's totally a scam. Someone who's asking you for payment by a gift card, it's always a scam. Gift cards are for gifts and not for payments. If they're asking you, telling you that in order that something awful will happen if you don't pay right away, or it's like a great offer that seems too good to be true, but you have to act immediately. This urgency is a sure sign of a scam, because if a person is unsure, talking to even one person can make the difference between them being scammed or them escaping a scam. They should talk to someone they know. They should look on websites that they're sure are the correct websites. They should use phone numbers right from their credit cards or from sites that they know are correct. They shouldn't click on links or attachments that someone sends you out of the blue. You're not expecting something, it's a sure sign. Scammers are very active, and they can often convince people to give up their personal information or their money, because this is their specialty. That's their job. They work on figuring out how to get people's defenses down. Also, people should help protect the elders in the community, because often they're home answering the phone. All of us are answering the phone more these days, but especially to make sure that they have somebody to call if they have a question about somebody who contacts them. I mean, I get calls on my phone constantly from scammers. Even though the FTC has brought lawsuits to stop robocallers and stopped a lot of them, I think it's during this pandemic, those robocalls are much more active. So if you get a robocall, other than say your medical providers or your pharmacies or someone you're expecting a call from, an unexpected robocall trying to sell you something is always a scam too.
This is Brenda. I just wanted to echo in that also people get scams from saying they're from the IRS, and if the person doesn't pay, they're coming to get their child, all sorts of things to kind of scare people. I mean, and that way that person could give over their information, they give over their social security number. I mean, IRS is not going to call you on the phone and ask you for your social security number or your payment information. We're not going to do that. And realize that when you go to irs.gov, not irs.com. So a lot of individuals have marked our system. They have hacked our systems in terms of what I mean is that they're able to go ahead and imitate what we have, even letters that go out, and especially during this time period. So just like Robin said, that we have vulnerable people, we have the homeless people also that we're trying to reach, that individuals may actually try to get their checks. Individuals try to help them with using to get a PIN in order to do that. So they get the person's debit card and they take advantage of that. So as advocates in the community, we're asking for your help to help warn these individuals because they may not know. So we thank you so much for all the help that you're giving us, and we look forward to working with you in the future. And we thank you for inviting us to speak.
Also, this is Robin. I also want to share some additional links with the community, which I'll send today for additional materials that you can use to help people.
And we just ask if you could, the advocates that's on the call, if they could just post this on their website. And if they do, please let us know so that we can let our commissioner know of the organizations that are working with us to help get these last payments or this last information out to the community. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
So as you know, this is live and it will be on our website forever. So if there's anything that they want to just voice, any specific website that you want to say out loud or anything like that, I'll give you like one last opportunity to do that so that when someone views it, as many people do in the future, they could have that information.
This is Brenda. I would say that for everyone to go to irs.gov coronavirus, the website, and to check that. They frequently asked questions. It's updated every day. And also the two portals, whether you need to go in to change your information, whether it's your banking information. Also, if you haven't received a payment as well, and you know that you've moved, also you should do a change of address because we would not have your new information. And also really don't be afraid of the IRS. We're here to help you. So really review our information and we're here to help and not to be afraid to ask. Thank you.
This is Robin. One resource is to know the latest about the pandemic. Go to coronavirus.gov, which takes you right to the CDC or the Center for Disease Control. To know more about scams and how to avoid them, visit ftc.gov/coronavirus/scams. And other resources from the government, go to usa.gov/coronavirus. But to report scams to the FTC, it's really important. It's called FTC. Our website is ftc.gov/complaint.
Thank you so much. Thank you both so much for all of that information. Thank you. Chris?
Just during that last round of questions, I see Community Board 5 has the hand raised, so I'm just going to unmute that line, see what that is. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you very much, Chris. Thank you very much, everyone. I understand that for the stimulus payments, for those people that, well, two questions. One is for those people that are receiving public benefits, that is considered deemable income, so they could potentially lose their public benefits if that makes them over income. That's one question. And the other question is, is there any clawback from public benefits for the stimulus payments?
sorry, what was the last question?
No, I actually forgot what the second one was. Well, just the first one.
Okay, so let me restate the first one. Basically, you're asking if the person is on public assistance, could they receive the monies or that
No.
affected?
For people that are receiving public benefits, either TANF, SNAP, Medicaid, or health insurance, public health insurance of some kind, is this considered deemable income for the purposes of public benefits?
No. No.
All right, because I've been told otherwise. So,
Well,
all right.
if you can send that to me in writing, that way I can actually, you could get my contact information, or I could get your contact information, and in that way you can forward it to me, and I will, that way I can get a sure answer for you in writing.
Thank you very much. I'm putting my email in the chat, and then I'm sorry, I have to go off. I have to go off and also take a call. So I'll put this in, and then I'm sorry, I have to leave. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh. All right, Madam Deputy, I think that covers all the hands that were raised.
Okay, excellent. So now we just want to move forward. We have an opportunity to speak with our Director of Health and Human Services, Dr. Nancy Keck, and she is, oh, looks like there's a presentation involved. We've had a lot of good feedback from her last few presentations on the topic of the coronavirus and where we are now. So looking forward to a very good update. Take it over, Nancy.
Nancy, I'm unmuting you now, Nancy. You should be good to start.
Thank you. It's Brenda, it's Robin Eichen, and are still on the line. Thank you. It's a tough act to follow when you're talking about money and really compelling topics like identity theft and fraud. I'm actually very grateful that you mentioned all of the scams that relate to COVID. There are many, and many of them that just made me realize that I get countless emails, even to the borough president's office, from people who are trying to sell us at-home kits, test your employee kits, and now I recognize that perhaps we should be forwarding those to some of the entities that you mentioned. We are, the first time I presented to this group was on March 21st with slides and whatever, and I looked back on them and at the data that I presented, and we are in such a very different place right now. Chris, if you can move to the first slide. This is a familiar view. I have for the longest time really focused on the New York State data. So this comes from their COVID tracker. In the left panel, it gives you the staggering numbers of individuals that have been tested. And on a daily basis, New York State, 60,000 and 80,000 people. It varies. Altogether, the number of positive cases in New York State have exceeded 400,000. A few days ago, the only other state in the country that has joined the 400,000 club was California. And that was because their reopening caused a massive resurgence of cases, positive cases, and they have since dialed back and closed down and reinstated orders from much earlier on. That has not happened for us. If you look at the bottom of below the map in that center panel, as of yesterday, the numbers of people that were tested is close to 5,500. Only 91 people tested positive in the Bronx yesterday. That's 11.5%. If you recall, way back in the height of 2-3 meetings ago in May and late April, the rates were pushing 30%, 25, 26, 29% positive cases. So we have made great strides. Next slide, please. This is from the New York City site. I like using that because I'm very Bronx focused these days. We're working closely with the borough president to go to many places in our communities, and we look very closely at what's happening in the Bronx specifically. So on the left, you see a curve. That's a very familiar curve. That is the number of cases overall between the beginning of the pandemic and as of 2 days ago, yesterday. That's yesterday's data. And then on the right, you see the curve of deaths. So we've been very successful in mitigating, flattening the curve, as we have heard so many times, and really sustaining the infection rates to the very low end. In the city, they're higher, obviously, than the rest of the state, but as of yesterday, we were at 1.2%. So that is remarkable. Even though we have passed through the phases of opening, we've been really good. On the left, that little graph, I assembled that from data from multiple days. And I wanted to show across all the counties, in the Bronx is the first time that we've seen numbers this low, and we've had 3 consecutive days with 0 fatalities in the Bronx. And that is also a good sign for us. Next slide, please. Overall, what that data show is that aside from the fact that reopening has not really caused a massive surge, we've now gone through 3 phases, and that curve has not changed. We are now, as of Monday, in phase 4. And I suspect that the stringent control that both the governor and the mayor are exercising over our phases and the things that can be reopened have been effective. We're biting the bullet here. It bears mentioning that in the entire country, there are only four states that have had this result, where they have reopened, gone through successive phases, and not seen a massive uptick. That's us, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, and Michigan. Good work on all parts. And in fact, I suspect that the coalition of the tri-state area governors working closely together and local governments have really been underlying that efficacy and keeping that curve low. Overall, I think if you speak to health officials, look at data and reports, it's really that the mandates for physically distancing ourselves from one another, wearing the masks in public, in places where you are indoors, observing all of the protocols and safety precautions of hand hygiene, and staying at home if you don't need to actually leave your house unless you're an essential worker. Those things all collectively have really made that difference. So one of the things that on the right is a kind of a sobering curve. I'd like all of us to note that even though there's a lot of press about death and destruction in the Bronx, we are actually faring relatively much better than either Brooklyn or Queens in terms of fatalities from COVID. It's really actually quite tragic that we have lost over 4,800 people and are pushing close to the 5,000 mark. That is an enormous number of losses just in our borough. And in the subsequent slides, it's important to note that that is not equally distributed, that in each borough, there are different demographics that represent those high numbers and the death tolls, but that for us, it's important to note that because of health disparities amongst Black and Hispanic, residents in the communities where they live, they are significantly higher risk. So if we look at the next slide. Chris, thank you. Can I bring my charger? I see my battery is going low. I need to get plugged in. So from the New York City data, which I love, I go there all the time. I troll their graphs. I look because anyone can go to this site and look and become citizen scientists. For me, this is a treasure trove of useful information. And even though I am not representing the views of the commissioners of health from the city or the state, but I use their data to really demonstrate what you can find in there. And when we give any presentations from the borough president's office, we do everything in an evidence-based way. We look at the data before we go into communities and talk about what's going on there and what we think. So on the left, it shows the overall deaths in the city, and it's broken down by race and ethnicity. And as we mentioned before, on the left side of the curve, you see the confirmed deaths. On the right are the probable deaths.
individuals who have not necessarily been tested for COVID, but they are considered presumptive cases. So, you know, the numbers are huge. The numbers of Latino and Black African Americans are significantly higher. And if you look on the right-hand side, in that graph, it actually breaks down not only by borough, but it also shows you that it matters what age group is being looked at. Fatalities in older individuals, ones that are in their 60s and above, is really the highest in the Bronx, more than in any other borough. It is likely, and I can't say positively, but we have significantly more nursing homes in our borough, and therefore that, at least in part, accounts for that demographic. The other issues are really entirely related to health equity, access to good care, and health disparities that we're going to talk more about. So it's important at some point later in the slides, I would love all of you to read the front page of the New York Times had an amazing article on July 5th. References for that will be included. Can we go to the next slide? And it gives a very good view. So what's important? Where you live, how you live, really makes a difference of how healthy you are and ultimately how resilient you and your family will be in the face of COVID-19. So I've pulled these from the New York Times has a wonderful resource. These maps are also on the New York City site, and you can look by zip code in your community what's happening. And I encourage all of you to do this. There have been many articles that have come out in the Times and in all kinds of medical journals that have tried to do analyses of what's really happening in these epicenters. Because if you look in the map on the left, which are areas that show the case rate of COVID infections in the Bronx, and then there's a little bit of Queens that you can see. And on the right is the death rate. You can see that there are at least one or two glaring, very dark areas that are near Black. And those are the hotspots. So in Northeast Bronx, that very dark section is 10469. So that is the area that we know as Allerton, Pelham Gardens, Baychester, Williamsbridge. That zip has the highest rate of infection and the highest number of deaths. So, you know, if you live there, you have a 1 in 23 chance of being positive, and you know you're also much more likely to die. There are other areas that are more densely populated, like to the right of 10469 is 10475, Co-op City. That's also relatively dark, high infection rate, much lower fatalities. To the left is Norwood, Olinville, 10467. That has received a lot of attention. And there are a number of individuals, many problems that are health. But overall, in that location, the rates for COVID infection are closer to 1 in 30, 1 in 29. And they have a high death rate, but it is still lower than in 10469. So, excuse me. Yes, 10469. So what does that have in common with the epicenter and the hotspot in Queens? So some articles have been published on that. And there are important things to note that many of us already know. One of them is the idea of population density. Unbelievably, the Black and Hispanic neighborhoods are the ones that are really heavily colored in the deep tone, suggesting very high infection rates and high death rates. So there is a high preponderance of public housing in the Bronx in those areas, and low-income housing in Queens, different types of housing, and yet the population density is high. Why is that? There are a lot of immigrant communities in both of those neighborhoods. They tend very often, and I, as a immigrant who came here when I was younger, am totally familiar with the practices. You live in multi-family, multi-generational households. Very often, families do that in order to conserve resources, in order to be able to send money home to their countries. So you get a high number of people living in a small household footprint. Interestingly, the really dark areas in 10370, 10369, those are East Elmhurst, Corona. Those neighborhoods are predominantly Hispanic. And they've been in the news regularly. That was the first huge epicenter in Queens within our counties, other than in the Bronx. And their numbers are still significantly higher than ours. You have a 1 in 20 chance of being positive if you live in one of those communities. Again, the individuals who live here in those neighborhoods are working class families. They are union households. They are civil servants. They are in transportation, in restaurants, in service industries, in jobs that they cannot either stop working because they are essential workers, they are allied healthcare professionals, nurses, et cetera, or they can't work from home. They must be public facing, and therefore they come in tremendous contact and are at higher risk. Similarly, unlike in other areas of the country where there's a big car culture, everyone almost in the Bronx and Queens, especially in those communities, use public transportation. They rely heavily on buses and subways. They don't get in a car and drive 3 miles to their job, in a safe space. So that's an additional risk factor. So that's an important thing. Why do we talk about that? Can we go to the next slide? We are carefully looking at a close lens at in the Bronx and also panning out and looking nationally. So this is from the article. I'd like to give all of you homework that it would be very, very useful to look at this article because it explains what's happening also at national level. There are national trends as well that show the same thing. So the New York Times apparently sued the Trump administration for access to this data, to get CDC data, raw data that they could use to create their own analyses and factor in information from census and elsewhere about income and ethnicities and other factors they've used in order to do these profiles. They looked at 1.5 million coronavirus patients. So these are people that have been tested and were positive, and they really looked for racial disparities in infection. And what they found is that at the national level, across the country, they looked at counties that basically cover more than half of the US. Latina and African-American residents are 3 times more likely to get infected, twice as likely to die. Interestingly, everyone explains in the past, there's always been explanations. Well, in poorer communities, you have a higher prevalence of underlying conditions like diabetes, obesity, hypertension, many other chronic illnesses, and people are more medically fragile. But this data is actually a little different because it shows that there's a real imbalance in the numbers of infection, and that doesn't correlate to just how healthy are you to begin with. What it underscores are really large inequities that are related to other factors other than health, and those are issues of housing and public transportation. And that's why I went into detail on the previous slide about where you live, how you live, with whom you live, and where you work really makes a huge difference in outcomes. The other thing that's important from this article that is interesting to look at, because I normally look at a very close lens at what's happening in the Bronx, is that the virus is really more prevalent in older Americans. They are disproportionately white. And so when you look at overall data, you don't see some of the stark differences when you compare by age group. And that's where you really see some huge, huge inequalities. The last bullet gives an example of that, and it relates to the graph on the right. So if you compare the green bars, if you were between the age of 40 and 59, and you are Latino or Hispanic, you have 5 times the rate of infection likely with COVID than someone who is like me, same age. And of those individuals who died from COVID, more than a quarter of them were younger than 60. That is huge. The converse for, white individuals, it's only 6% of individuals die that young within that age group. And that has huge economic impact, and that causes great strain on families. And that is an area that we are looking at, because we also live in a borough that is predominantly Black and brown. If we can go to the next slide. So that brings me to why are we having this conversation and what do we want to do beyond this? So the borough president, our local public health commissioners in Bronx, and the Bronx Neighborhood Health Board or Office, my apologies for not getting that right, have all weighed in on the fact that there are health disparities in our borough. We are going to have next week on the 29th a panel discussion about health disparities and COVID in the Bronx, and really to flesh out what are the challenges to living and being healthy here. Dr. Barbeau is going to give us an intro and an overview. She's extremely familiar with the issues, and she's a Bronxite, and we are absolutely thrilled that she's joining us. And in addition to that, we have 3 panelists, all of whom have a really bird's eye view of understanding the social, economic, and policy things that make people sick in this borough, and how racism can contribute to making people sick here. So we are going to invite all of you to come to register. It is not meant for medical professionals, it's meant for citizens of the Bronx. It will be tailored as such. There will be readings and resources and things that we would like everybody to look at least in advance, so that you can understand how health is measured, what some of the important previous findings have been about systemic racism and the impact it has on health. There's a wonderful TED Talk that is excellent. Our other panelists are amazing. The race scholar is a local Bronxite and teaches, she's a policy PhD at Metropolitan College and has done a lot of work in this area. And lastly, we have an intensive care ICU physician who has treated patients both in the community as well as out, in the ICU. During COVID, she was redeployed away from a very large practice in Fordham Road back in to treat patients, children and adults who were in intensive care with COVID. So I urge all of you, check out the link. You can go to our website and do that as well. And you can register for it. No information needed. And if we have the next slide. The other thing that I wanted to mention with regard to the local Bronx Health Department, they have launched a number of initiatives, because from those maps, you can see that in some cases, numbers seem very low in the Bronx. And a lot of that has to do with that in some zips, in some areas, you don't have a lot of information because people are not willing to come forward and get tested. They are concerned, just like they are for other things, about releasing personal information and, going to get public health services. So there is a coronavirus testing site where you can find a site near you. It's almost like Google. You put in your zip and you can get public, private, government, a whole array of testing sites. And for the most part, testing is required to be free. If you do have health insurance, they'll ask you for it. If you do not, they will test you without cost and offer you the opportunity to get Metro Plus or some other local health insurance through our public health office. I wanted to say that last week, the borough president and members of his team and Dr. Barbeau, we all went to a pop-up testing site, a tent in the sort of Tremont area, Valentine Avenue, St. Simon's Stock Church. And that was heavily publicized. It was a fabulous event. The borough president got tested on site to demonstrate how it works, photos, and he posted his results right away. His team, as we are very slowly filtering back into the office in very low numbers, some of us as a group, particularly my team, small group that we share an office space, we went to Lincoln Hospital to check out how it works over there. And it was wonderful. We were in, out, it took a few minutes. Not a lot of information collected. It was very safe and clean, and they treated us wonderfully, and we got our results through calling into a portal with everything was pre-done for us. They were like, here, this is what you do, this is what you type in, and we got our results. It was good. I would like all of you to do your civic duty and mention that these people should use this site. People should get tested. Knowing your status saves lives, that of yourself, potentially if you don't know, and that of your family members, because you could be spreading without knowledge and without having any symptoms at all. So next. Last thing I wanted to mention, as we've moved into phase 4, we get a lot of information from the governor's office about changes and directives. I just wanted to sort of follow through on what's open and what's not, because even though a lot of things were supposed to open in phase 4, they have not. We've dialed back based on the experiences of California. So the things that are opening, I'm so excited: the zoo, the botanical gardens, outdoor, anything that's outdoor, historic sites and cultural institutions and agricultural places, etc. The city is allowing music, television, and all kinds of video, photo, movie productions on sites all over the city. That is being restored, and some professional sports, most of you know, but with no fans. And for those of you who are follow collegiate sports and the horse and auto racing, not yet. That's not coming back. Next, please. What has not reopened are some of the really important cultural and historic sites that are indoors. So Empire State Building, museums, and certainly indoor dining. All of that was supposed to open in phase 4, and one can say that the mayor and the governor have agreed strongly to urge caution, and those plans have been nixed. Same for theater arts, opera, ballet, any of those things, anything that involves sitting with large groups of people in closed environments, nothing is reopening in the fall. All of these seasonal ticket holders, everything's been canceled. And even though some of us have the luxury of driving to Westchester and Long Island in order to do shopping, because they are in advance of us and we've all taken advantage of that. Certainly I have in the city, do not expect. We are not going to be seeing shopping malls, movie theaters, and sadly, most sadly of all, the gyms opening anytime soon. So, unless we keep up the good work. Next slide, please. Most of you know, I don't know how many of you have taken public transportation. Everything remains the same. The cleaning and the timing of those still remains, that every subway is fumigated, everything is cleaned. They go through with industrial grade disinfectants. It's mandatory to wear masks, and in the trains, you can actually get, before you enter the train, you can get a mask and free hand sanitizer. City provides that in order to help everyone stay safe. They've also put those, yellow decals that show you what's the spacing, how far away you have to stay from other passengers while you're waiting online and or on the platform. And buses are still free. You all know that. You still have to wear masks, and they also are being cleaned daily. Last slide, please. The final push, earlier this week, the mayor talked about the census. We have an incredibly poor showing in New York. We definitely need everyone to step up and push this, because the federal funding that comes to our communities through this data is really important. We want everyone to promote that there are no questions about immigration, your income, taxes, any criminal history, nothing. It's all about counting who lives where, in which communities, so that those communities can receive aid in proportion to how many of us live there. So next week is the Census Week of Action. We will be pushing for everyone to help out in that goal. And we want all of you, please, to look at and register for our events to hear about health disparities in the Bronx. And that is it. I thank you for your time. It's my pleasure always. If you have questions, I'm happy to entertain. My slides will be available, and I'm also will send some resources in addition to what many that Ms. Eichen shared with you. Thanks.
Thank you, Nancy. That was a very, frankly, a lot of information. So I feel like we might have a few questions. So Chris, do you see any hands raised?
I'm taking a look now. I don't see any yet.
I get the privilege of speaking to Nancy on corona issues at least 3 times a week. So I don't have any additional questions, but I will defer to others.
Yeah, I do see, I don't know if the hands are still raised from earlier, but George and Cedric both have the hand raised icon on. So George, did you have a question or is that from before?
I did have a question.
Okay.
Thank you, Nancy, for putting all this information together. I represent Community Board 12, which is in the North Bronx. We straddle highway to highway. So we have 104, 66, 67, 69. I've stated this before in other forums that I've had with OEM and DOH. We have long known in our neck of the woods that we have suffered and have been hit the hardest in the Bronx. Yet every time the administration rolls out policy proposals that are focused on coronavirus relief efforts, none of it focuses on the North Bronx. As a matter of fact, I live in Co-op City, which is 10475. We had to fight, the elected officials had to fight in order to get the testing center that we have here by the movie theater. And that came several weeks after other sites had opened up in the South Bronx, for example. My concern going forward with a lot of this information is that it seems that even after several months, 3-4 months now, however long it's been, we still don't seem to have a handle on rolling this out. You've just stated with the phase 4 reopening, museums, gyms, sporting events, which occur outdoors except basketball, are still closed to public, yet we're focused and have plans on reopening schools, for example. Right. I've read recently that we are underreporting coronavirus and that one in 5 people may have it, even though they don't test, so they don't necessarily know they have it, which is what my concern is for the 1.1 million students that are going back to school. If you're putting, and obviously they're not all going back at the same time, but even staggering the amounts of kids that are going back into the classroom, you're still going to run into transmissions. I read an article from The Cut the other day that was talking about transmission rates in summer camps. So it's not that I don't trust the information. It just seems like the information is being politicized and it's not necessarily, policies are not following what should be followed. So for example, we're still fighting, for example, when they rolled out the SYP program initially, it was dedicated to certain zip codes in the South Bronx, nothing in the North Bronx. Now that's changed, it's for everybody, but that's only because of the defund police initiative. My same concern is that the city is rolling out, or this administration is rolling out policies to reopen. And I know that we're being cautious and, now we're sort of patting ourselves on the back because we're only one of 4 states that have a slow, steady decline of transmission rates. But I think that that's only because our kids are not in school and because we're not doing museums and because we're not doing other things. And I don't know, is it premature for us to be going through all this when we don't have a vaccine? Because we've seen nationally and in Europe, herd immunity doesn't work. Sweden is now hurting as a result and is actually suffering more because they tried to push herd immunity and they didn't get the results that they wanted. They actually have worse results than their sisters, Denmark, Norway, and all the other stuff. So again, I don't know if you've seen the same things, because again, when we look at my district, we've been suffering for a long time and we still don't have a testing site. The only testing sites we have now are from clinics that are in our district. And I don't know if that's because of an access to healthcare issue, but I don't think it is, because we have Wakefield, Montefiore campus in our district. So there really is no excuse for us not having a testing site. But that's where I'm at. Again, I don't know if you've been able to see that in the data that you've looked at. We've known this in our district for a very long time. We have our meetings. This is what we discuss, is the lack of option and the resources that are focused on the zip codes that are worst hit. And yet, we still continue to do things despite the fact that shows that For example, our zip codes are the worst.
You know, it's complex. You touched on so many important issues. And I think that for politicians who represent various, districts and areas, they very often focus on the things that have high impact. So I can honestly say, if you were to dive into the data, you would find that, let's say in your neighborhood and adjacent to you, where the greatest number of cases and deaths have occurred, the per capita income is like 3 to 4 times higher than areas of the South Bronx, right? So that's one area. So when you have to make a decision about resources, for example, for the summer youth education, whatever program, is that right? Yeah. Employment program, my apologies. The issue is that who needs to benefit from that most? The people that come from those communities where family of 4 is living on 40K. And, in some of the Northeast communities that you mentioned, including in Co-op, people are significantly more affluent. There's less unemployment. It's just by virtue of their jobs. And, that they live in large structures. Co-op has very high rates. It's 1 in 24 people is likely to be positive. But their death rate is low. It's 178, I think, as of today or yesterday. Actually have died there if you look from the New York City site. Other areas have triple the number of deaths, but they're very densely populated and they have a lot of people. So that question is big. I don't know that I can even address that. Those are social and economic issues. That's for a whole other. We can have an entire community conversation on that. But I think that if you follow an evidence-based approach in how the planning goes, I don't think it's wrong to have scaled back and decided to be gradual. I think our local officials, and certainly our mayor and our governor, for whatever jockeying they do, they value life. They don't want any further death tolls. They don't want to be on the front page of every international newspaper like what's happened in California. They are micromanaging every step to ensure that we don't lose more lives. We've lost enough. Like overall, if you look at, depending on which site you look at, we're talking about 25,000 people have died. So that is staggering. That is so monumental that you cannot afford even another one. Testing sites, I wish. Go to that site. I'm telling you, I can look you up. Go to any one of the health and hospital sites. There are public, private, government, many sites. People are reluctant. If you feel onerous, you have to take time out from what you're doing to get there. And some people have said, I'm not going to get tested because I'm risking myself by being out with all those people. The answer is you must get tested. It is absolutely vital. And, on a final note, I have a kid in college too, and I didn't get money from him either. And I wanted to say, yes, you mentioned that. That was very important because, we've got dependents who are in school and high school and college. They just somehow filtered by the wayside. So I hope I addressed at least some of your comments and questions. I'm always happy to talk to you.
As usual, we thank you, George, for your insight in all matters, bringing forward that information. It was a lot in the question. Again, I hope that we were able to answer some of it. Chris, do we have any other questions?
Just taking a look now. Cedric, did you have a new question or is that from earlier? I'll unmute you.
New question.
All right.
Okay. Hi, Nancy. How are you?
Good morning, Cedric.
Nancy, I wanted to get into something related to you being a great physician. They have talked now about there being a second wave, but they also talked about within this first wave, there being a mutation of the virus. Have you heard anything medically related to, one, the second wave? We hear that it's going to be associated with the fall, with flu season. Do you know if there's going to be a push out by the city to introduce more opportunity for people to get flu shots? So at least that will reduce the opportunity for people to get the flu. And do you know if they get that shot, if someone does come to a health facility, would that health facility be able to determine if that flu shot has been effective and what they have representing more of the pattern of someone that may have COVID?
Again, a complex question. I'll try to break it down I have not read sufficient literature on mutations, but I am well aware that the idea is that COVID is here to stay. It will come back every year, as does the flu. And so we as a society have to modify this moving on and moving forward. Once they do develop vaccines, they may or may not be fully, all viruses mutate. That's why every year, for 30 years, I've had a flu shot. The thinking in medicine is that collectively, over all those years, I've built up a vast array of immunity that recognizes many different variations of the flu virus, and that has protected me from getting really tremendously ill. Although earlier this year, that was not the case. And the flu shot was not effective. It was like 30 to 40% effective. We have years like that. I can't predict, what will happen with a vaccine against coronavirus. There are some that are in testing right now in Europe. There's a race to develop something that can be implemented quickly, testing that will be safe in communities. It's kind of, scary to test something for the first time. But I think people should still consider getting vaccinated. It's a personal decision, but ask a public health official. See what Dr. Barbaro says next week about what are some of the most profound ways in which we can protect ourselves. Citizens have personal, responsibility also to be safe, to wear masks. The very things that we are doing to protect ourselves from COVID and that we seem to be doing somewhat effectively will protect us also from the flu. But I think moving forward, this will become a normal part of the annual vaccinations. Yes, it will come back. Recycle, travel the world and come back again, as does all the other pathogens. I don't remember your other questions. It's been a long morning, so I apologize. If there's a follow up to that.
That's fine. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for speaking to me. I hope I see you. I hope you register. Go and look. Spread that.
Yes.
We're going to have a good conversation. It's important. This is not for public outreach and education. And as Kathy says, it will live in perpetuity somewhere on the BP's website. So.
Great. Okay, Chris, any other questions?
No other hands raised at this time. So I think that's it for questions for Nancy.
Okay, so I'm just trying to keep everyone's time and just be aware of the time. I think at this point we'll do announcements of any kind. There might be some folks who want to say they're here from a certain agency and they have an announcement or something like that that they want to share as I'm speaking. I'm asking you to electronically raise your hand so that you can be acknowledged by Chris. If you're on the phone and you'd like to be acknowledged, can you do so by pressing the *9, right, Chris? *9?
Yep,
okay,
*9,
right.
yeah.
*9, and you can also be acknowledged in that way over the phone. So, do we have any hands raised, Chris?
Not yet. I'll give everybody a few seconds here to do so.
Okay. I would expect everyone to be so quick because we've done this so many times and everyone is like quick on the draw with these Zoom techniques.
Yeah, I don't see any hands raised for announcements. Hold on. Michael Sharp. There we go. Michael, you're unmuted.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. A lot of good information today. My name is Michael Sharp. I'm a Bronx liaison with the Department of Finance. And I usually direct everyone's attention to our website for information regarding latest updates for Department of Finance information. But I also want to make the community boards aware that if they're interested in having sort of like an information section, let's say with their housing committee or maybe their senior committee, to just we can virtually meet with you to consider some things that are pertinent to your community. show you how to do some things on the website, just let you know how you can keep people engaged in getting benefits and following up inquiries. We don't do casework per se in that session, but as a way to take a deeper dive into the resources that are available, we are available to do that. Should I give my email address?
Yes, please.
Okay, it's sharp, SHARP, letter M, sharp M, at finance.nyc.gov. And let's see if we can arrange a time where we can meet virtually, perhaps with that committee or anyone that's interested, and keep you updated on things with the Department of Finance. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Any other hands, Chris?
That's all that I see.
Excellent. So, of course, piggybacking on what Nancy said, we have this great forum next week that is basically we're discussing healthcare disparities, especially as it results in from the coronavirus. It is lots of heavy hitters, lots of great information. We hope that you will sign up and participate, and also that you will disseminate the information to the rest of the community board and maybe even your email list. We thank everyone for being here today. As usual, thank you for your participation. Thank you for being a part of your respective community boards and agencies, and thank you so much for all of your continued effort. And with that, we will end this yet another great virtual meeting, and we thank you all. Chris, everybody stay still until we get off live.
I see Suri raised her hand here at the last minute.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Darn it. We almost made it.
Suri, go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone. I promise that I'm going to be very brief, but I just wanted to acknowledge some questions that I have gotten from the borough president and other committee boards. This is Suri with the mayor's office. So specifically on street vendor enforcement, I know that Marisol sent me a question, as well as other committee board district managers. Please do loop me in, because this is a multi-agency approach, so I can guide you to the right agency for anything that has to do with street vendor enforcement. And with that was a beautiful closing. So everyone must have my contact information. If not, I'll put it in the chat, but that will be all. Thank you so much.
Thank you. On the off chance that we have another hand.
Oh, we're good.
Okay. We're getting there. Bang, bang. Everyone, again, thank you and have a great rest of the month. See you next month.